There stood the ancient village of Ndukwe. Ndukwe was not merely a village, it was a living memory of generations. Its huts, crowned with thatched roofs, formed circle around wide compounds where children played under a mango tree. An old man sat under the Nnukwu tree telling stories of ancestral spirits. The people of Ndukwe were farmers, blacksmiths, traders, healer, and hunter. When the rain came, the earth softened and crops rose green and thick. When Harmattan arrived, dry winds swept through the land, coating leaves in pale dust. And when the hunting season approached, the village became charged with anticipation. And when the hunting season approached, the village became charged with anticipation. At the center of Ndukwe stood the king's palace, a broad hut, walled compound decorated with white chalk symbols and guarded by carved wooden pillars. King Ezenyim, ruler of Ndukwe, was respected for his wisdom, fairness, and love for brave men. Among all the men in Ndukwe, none was more admired than Obidike. Obidike, in his late 30s, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark skin, burnished by years beneath the sun. His eyes were calm and steady, and his voice carried the warmth of a man whose heart held no malice. Though known as the greatest hunter in Ndukwe, Obidike was not proud. He lived with his wife Adobe in a small hut at the edge of the village near the forest path. Their home was modest, a clay hutted, woven sleeping mats, clay pots lined neatly on wooden shelves, and a small backyard where herbs and pepper plants grew. For 8 long years, Obidike and Adobe had been married without children. In many homes, such silence would have grown into bitterness, but not in theirs. Adobe often sat outside in the moonlight, watching other women braid their daughter hairs or call their sons indoors. Sometimes sadness touched her face like a passing cloud. Yet Obidike never allowed sorrow to harden his heart. Children come from the hands of time, he would tell her gently, and time obeys only our gods. Each dawn before sunrise, Obidike rose, sharpened his hunting spear, slung his leather satchel over his shoulder, and entered the great forest. The forest beyond Ndukwe was immense, a world of thorny iroko trees, tangled veins, hidden streams, and shadow alive with rustly creatures. There Obidike hunted grass cutters, prized among the villagers for their tender meat. And every morning he returned with game larger than any other hunter could find. By the side of his hut, beside a smoky firewood hearth, he roasted and cooked the grass cutter with herbs, scent leaves, and pepper. The aroma drifted through the village lanes. Children would gather around smiling. Widows received portions. The elders were never forgotten. Obidike gave freely. That was why Ndukwe loved him. One bright market morning during the dry season, the royal gun sounded through the village square. All the men gathered under the great giant Odala tree. King Ezenyim rose from his carved throne and said, "This year hunting festival shall be greater than any before it. The hunter who brings the largest grass cutter shall be crowned best hunter of Ndukwe and honored before all kingdoms." The crowd roared with excitement. Then the king turned towards Obidike. "And if Obidike wins again, as many expect, his name shall be carved in the royal hall forever." Applause thundered. Obidike bowed humbly. But among the crowd stood a man whose face darkened with envy and jealousy, Okonkwo. Okonkwo was strong but not noble. He was tall and muscular, with sharp restless eyes that measured every man as rival or obstacle. Unlike Obidike, Okonkwo hunted not for love of craft but for praise. Yet no matter how hard he tried, his catch was always smaller. Whenever both men returned from hunting, villagers would gather around Obidike enormous grass cutters, while barely glancing at Okonkwo major prey. This wounded Okonkwo deeply, and bitterness grieved him. Each cheer for Okonkwo felt to him like mockery. At night, his bitterness grew. His wife Ndidi was as ambitious and greedy as he was. She could not bear hearing Obidike praise in every compound. One evening, as oil lamp flickered inside their hut, Ndidi leaned closer and whispered, "If Obidike lives until the festival, your name will never rise." Okonkwo said nothing. Ndidi's voice sharpened. "Then remove him." The silence that followed was heavy and dangerous. At last, Okonkwo nodded. "Yes, you are right. We need to remove him." And darkness entered their hearts completely. 3 days before the hunting festival, Obidike entered the forest before dawn. Mice clung low over the undergrowth. Birds called softly from distant branches. He tracked fresh grass-cutter prints near a stream bank, unaware he was being followed. Hidden behind thick bamboo thickets, Okonkwo and Ndidi watched him. Ndidi held Okonkwo's hand while looking at his face. Okonkwo's breathing was uneven, holding a stick. As Obidike bent near a burrow opening, cracked, the stick came down hard against the back of his head. Obidike collapsed instantly. Blood stained the leaves. For one terrible moment, the forest fell silent. Okonkwo stared at the falling hunter, trembling. Ndidi grabbed his hand. "Run! Run faster!" They fled back towards Ndukwe. Okonkwo and Ndidi burst into the village square screaming, "Help! Help! Obidike is dead!" Villagers rushed from every direction. "What happened? What happened?" Ndidi wailed dramatically, rolling herself on the floor. "We found him in the bush. A wild beast must have attacked him." Shock spread like fire. Men ran into the forest and so returning carrying Obidike's lifeless body on palm front stretchers. Adobe collapsed beside him in anguish. She cried tall through the air, "My husband, my heart, who has done this?" Even the strongest men wept openly. When news reached King Ezenyi, he staggered in disbelief. "No, not Obidike." The king stood over the body and whispered, "Great hunter of our land, what happened to you?" No one had answered, only grief. For 2 days, Ndukwe mourned. Drums were silent. Cooking fires burned low. Women covered their heads in black clothes. Obidike was buried under the Nnuku tree near the forest edge, the path he has walked all his life. Adobe placed his spear beside his grave. "My husband, the great hunter in Ndukwe village, go after whoever have a hand in your sudden death. Do not allow them to go unpunished. Fight for me, my lovely husband." The village seems emptier. Every children played quietly. Yet, while Ndukwe mourned, Okonkwo and Ndidi could not sleep. Every creak of wood sounded like accusation. Every gust of wind felt like judgment. Guilt stalked them. At last, the hunting festival morning arrived. Hunters gathered in ceremonial skins. Drum beat again. Crowd assembled in bright wrappers and bead. But just as the king prepared to begin, the village native doctor, Dibia Chukuma, with a white chalk on his left eyes, entered the square in full sacred regalia. His white chalk-marked face was grave. He struck his staff upon the earth. "Stop! Everyone, stop! Stop! Stop!" The drum ceased instantly. "The hunt cannot begin." The crowd murmured fearfully. The Dibia raised his voice. To Fiakwa. Aro. On Eke market day, a great abomination stained this kingdom. Blood was spilled by this seat. Until truth is spoken, no hunt shall prosper. King Ezenyim rose. "Speak clearly, Dibia." The native doctor pointed directly at Okonkwo. "This man carries death on his hand," gasped a roasted. Okonkwo staggered backward. Dibia thundered, "If he does not confess, thunder shall strike him where he stands." Dark cloud rolled suddenly across the sky. Lightning flashed and they screamed. Then she broke. Ndidi threw herself before the king. Mercy, mercy, my great king. Her voice cracked with terror. It was me, my greed, my envy. I pushed my husband into killing Obidike. The square exploded in outrage. Hey, the gods of our land. Hey, wicked people. Women cried curses. Men seized Okonkwo as he trembled helplessly in the dissolve. I could not bear hearing Obidike praise. I wanted my husband to be the best hunter. Okonkwo fell to his knees. I struck him from behind. Please forgive me. But forgiveness could not erase blood. King Ezenyim's face hardened with sorrow. You destroyed the noblest man in Ndukwe for greed. He lifted his staff. From this day, Okonkwo and Ndidi are banished forever from Ndukwe. Let them leave before the sun sets and never return. The sentence was final. Before dusk, Okonkwo and Ndidi were driven from the village gates into the evil forest, deep, deep into the forest. No one spoke to them. No one offered water. Their footsteps disappeared into the wideness beyond the hills, and Ndukwe never saw them again. Some said they wandered into distant lands. Some said they wandered into a far forest and they will be devoured by wild animals. All that believed Obidike's spirit punished them in lonely forests. Though grief never fully left Adaobi, she chose not to let sorrow consume her. She turned Obidike hut into a shelter for widows and orphan children. She cooked for the hungry just as her husband once had. Years later, a miracle came. Adaobi adopted twin orphan boys whose parents had died in a flood. She raised them in Obidike's name. She taught them kindness before strength, generosity before pride. And when they became men, both became hunters, not merely skilled but honorable like Obidike. Yes, no hunting festival in Ndukwe began without first honoring Obidike. Before every hunt, the chief drummer struck 3 slow beats, and the herald declared, "Let all remember Obidike, greatest hunter of Ndukwe, whose hands were strong, whose hearts were gentle." The villagers would bow their heads. For though greed has taken his life, it could not kill his legacy. His kindness lives in memory, in shared meals, in honest labor, in the peace that returned to Ndukwe, and so the villagers prosper, not because of wealth or power, but because they never forget the lesson written in blood beneath the red earth sky. That greatness is not in being praised above others, but in living so well that even after death, your goodness still fills the heart of the living. Thank you very much for watching Tales by Grandma. Please don't forget to share, like, and subscribe for more interesting stories. Bye.